The reason why we chose vertical AI is that as a fund, we've been, and I think our partners here, MVP and HL, can also speak to this. Many of us have been investors in vertical SaaS for many years, right? These vertical SaaS companies were tackling stuff at the application software layer and addressing inefficiencies, and there were some phenomenal companies that were created, like Shopify, MindBody, or we've had some great wins in New York City, or at least on the ASV side, and I know our co-partners here have as well. But when you fast forward to 2023, I remember going to the Bay Area. I feel every time I go to the Bay Area, most of my college friends live there, and I feel like there is if you're not an AI company, you don't exist. But I remember vividly when a few of my friends were playing around with OpenAI's early version of ChatGPT. This was back in late 2022. And it was fascinating to see how when it actually went through a public release, how quickly a new industry was born in the area of vertical AI. And so what I'd say, unlike the predecessors of areas of B2B software like vertical SaaS, the LLM layer was really able to address issues like high-cost, repetitive language-based tasks. And so our friends at Bessemer wrote a great white paper about vertical AI, which said that if you think about software as a percentage of US GDP, maybe it's 1% of US GDP. When you start thinking about the power of what generative AI can do in addressing other areas that rely on language, repetitive language tasks, to tackle industries like healthcare, accounting, legal, that suddenly more than 10x's the overall TAM when you think about things that involve language. But we're also seeing incredible new business models, things like co-pilots, agents, AI-enabled services that were allowing us to address things that were never possible in B2B SaaS.
I think we've been on a build versus buy curve that's changed even pre-Gen AI. I don't think even the original kind of do you build, do you buy question is actually that much relevant anymore. Even the buy has so much more opportunity to create differentiation with it. And that's probably a post-cloud, post-kind of SaaS opportunity. I think Gen AI will probably just put that on a little bit of steroids. We're still wrestling with how much of this entire stack is going to be the source of a competitive differentiation for us as an institution, which has a higher correlation to, do I want to have the skills? Do I want to kind of be the closest to it, as opposed to, do I want to partner? And so I think, on the one hand, that could slow down a little bit of the adoption. On the other hand, I think it creates a pretty wide open field for those to kind of insert themselves.
With generative AI, it's in everybody's hands. Now, every individual wants to use it or wants to find a way to use it in their organization. And we're finding that what's slowing people down is they don't know the use case yet. They don't know the problem they're trying to solve yet. So they'll come to us and say, well, we want to train on this, this, and this, and we've built our own tools for this or that. And I said, okay, but what are you trying to learn first from us? Why isn't it taking hold? Because we find that they're not taking the time to ask themselves what problems they're trying to solve before they start implementing.
What we have a problem of right now is benchmarks. So not understanding, everybody's looking at everything from a perspective of SaaS products and vertical products, and they're missing the fact that it's not like a tool that you're selling people. It's a job function at some level, and I don't like to say that at all, but the reality though is that it's a you would write a job description as a way to evaluate a series of candidates that would come in. You're not doing that with AI. To me, that's a fundamental problem, because what you're approaching it is an old approach to computer science. We're leaving traditional computer science, just straight up. Right, we are generating words as we go, and then the cool thing though is that we have words, we made those words do something on a system, and now the sequence of words is really important, and then boom, now we get scale. But I've noticed that the big issue is benchmarking. So that's why things where, Sweetbench is a good example for OpenAI, for analyzing codecs or software engineers, because essentially what you can see though is what does a human perform at in this area versus what does an AI agent perform autonomously in this regard. So you have to start looking at it outside of, you have to look at it from a perspective of the engineers I could hire, how do I look at it from a perspective of a job function? Is this AI agent able to not just do a workflow? Workflows are menial and rudimentary now. Those are you do them because you have to, and because if you look at a business process, you're just trying to map former business process to there, but what you're looking for now is, the way an employee would work. You look for non-deterministic workflows of how a planning execution does, a tree of thought, a chain of thought, to then sequence new analysis and then grab different tools or create new tools to then solve problems. So if you're not approaching it from that way, I think that's the reason why adoption's a little bit weird, because people aren't approaching it that way yet.
One of the first moats we look at Sorcero is domain data and AI. So we have our own enrichment engines, multi-layered ontologies, and different ways of adding business logic and context to the data that we're working with, whether it's within an enterprise, whether it's public data that we're bringing in, or whether it's the data that our customers are using us to collect. That's very, very important. Number two, in life sciences, like in many other regulated industries, we're really still very much in the process of digital transformation. Our customers are very rarely replacing another piece of software with us. They're often going from agencies and PR firms and manual reporting to software for the very first time. So there's immense room to really capture the business logic and bring to bear workflow gravity, where they do their work on our platform. And that means they're wrapped around it, and that leads to a lot of defensibility. If you take that away, they go back to pen and paper, which none of them want to do. And it takes a pretty long time to get that business logic captured. And I would say the last is the data gravity. There's a lot of shift happening in what is truly a system of record. In our industry, for example, CRMs only have about 24% of the totality of the data that matters to the average customer. Being the new system of record where all of the information lives as a unified layer and a unified layer of intelligence, we think of that as a pretty serious moat. And underpinning all of that, see, I said there would be a fourth, is the regulatory and the compliance piece. To be really deep in vertical AI and definitely in life sciences, you need to get your regulations right, whether it's something like data residency to GXP to establishing new ways of applying LLMs and multimodal and MLMs to enterprise data. So we see those four things and we maintain them pretty strongly.
A lot has to do with how this, what you actually do with the data and how you actually how you execute. So it's great that you have all of this data and you might be able to produce a report or some general insight into off the back of a of a large document, or being able to pull in a couple of different data sets and then provide some insights. It's the execution of actually what you do with it. So like in our industry, in like the security and compliance space, it's always I can produce all of this data, and then what do I do with it now? And that's always where the struggle has been. And it's always that we need that additional task flow and workflow management so that if something does happen, what are the next steps? And this is where we've really taken advantage of AI and being able to actually facilitate that workflow that previously just wasn't there.
It's not always about getting the highest valuation. I think it's really, really important that we kind of talk about that, because it's who's going to add the most value to you, because ultimately that's going to drive and that's going to allow you to do additional raises. It's going to get you more revenue. It's going to have a better exit, right? All those things are really, really important. And I think that sometimes we put so much weight on having the highest term sheet we can get. That's not always the best, right? So I would
It's a whole journey.
It's a whole journey,
You're
and
in
it's
for
like
the end,
I
not
know when
somewhere
we're
in the middle.
seed and seed plus, I see seed plus a lot, or even Series A, we get so excited, right? We're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone valued my company this high, right? Which is fantastic. But think about what B, C, an exit, a D exit, like think about what that looks like. Think about the long game. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind.
There are many a great could have been IPOs and
Yes.
could have been M&A deals that didn't get done because somebody was chasing headline at Series B,
Yep.
C, or otherwise. We are spending a lot of time understanding the flow of the ecosystem. As many of you know, that ecosystem is changing materially, right? We have multi-stage capital providers now that are coming further down the stack. We came out of a zero interest rate environment where basically Series C companies were going public. We have earlier stage companies getting to IRR or ARR levels in AI that we've never seen before in seed, Series A, Series B. It's amazing the size of these things. So the capital continuum and the need to think about that next step, I think, is going to come faster for many, and many in this room, given how quickly the technology and all of the things that you're evolving are coming.
At IBM, right, we have an AI ethics board, right? And we make sure to run all of that. We're very clear on things that we invest in and things we don't invest in. We believe in smart regulation and investing in the use cases as opposed to algorithms, right? Or models that are changing so quickly. So we don't do facial recognition, but I think it's okay for AI to choose my Spotify song even if I hate it, right? The impact is so low, right? So I think you've got to look at that, and every investment we make, we look at very, very closely is how is the technology being used. We do security checks before we deploy it, and we ensure that it is something that we are ready and willing to stand behind through our ethics board. Right? I think with that question you're asking is incredibly important. It's going to continue to be important as AI evolves. And so you just always have to be on the lookout to make sure that it's something you personally can stand behind as well as your organization.